Magdalene's blog 54. The thing I remember most was that with the growing hope, the thirst also grew, so closely entwined that they were almost the same thing. Their tangibility gave me something to hang on to, but at the same time the demons in my mind space became increasingly agitated. Almost as a counteraction to my jabbering spirit thoughts, the rumbling sway of the cart along the road became pleasantly familiar, together with the clipping of the mule's feet and the faint grinding crunch of the wheels when the track became stony. Some part of me wanted to reach out to Rachel in thanks for all she was doing, but it was as much as I could do to not vent out some cry of doom or rant of hatred against the world and all of its inhabitants instead. Both inns we stayed at were serviceable enough with travellers of every sort, either staying in one of the low lodges like us, or else camped out in the area beyond. Their similarity was obviously suited to the purpose that they served. Each had a central building or area where food and drink could be had, and whatever entertainment was passing along the road sampled. I preferred to stay away from as much of it as possible, and although I knew Rachel wished to sit closer to the fire and where the music was being played or songs sang, she stayed with me instead. I could not help it. I had to guard myself against what had happened before. We made good progress on both days, and an unspoken excitement grew as we travelled on, understanding that we shared, perhaps, of the deeper hope that we could not have put easy words around. In the silence of those days' journey, we sensed something important was happening, not just for me, but for us both. Then, on that third day, we came close to our destination, and I caught sight of sunlight glinting on the inland sea. So much my home, that I began to cry, and even the wailing of the spirits seemed to be the same thing. Rachel looked at me, and was able to put an arm around my shoulders without invoking an adverse reaction from my part. Further ahead, we could see the beginnings of the town sprawled out, and as we approached, the mule speeded its pace, as if it could sense its labours were nearly done. Before long, we were amongst the buildings, and passing people in the road or by its side. Rachel selected someone to ask the way. "Excuse me," she called to a woman carrying 2 pails of water suspended from a yoke across her shoulders. "Can you tell me where the healer Yeshua lives?" The woman looked back at Rachel, across to me, and back at Rachel again. She lowered her burden onto the ground and wiped her forehead with the back of a hand before replying. "Yeshua, you mean?" It was a statement rather than a question. "He lives in Lakeside Way, not far from here, towards the sea, a house called Marimian. But I think you will find it full today." She chuckled to herself, and then looked me over again. "She need his help?" she asked, not unkindly, but slightly wary at the same time. "Thank you," replied Rachel. "We'd better get going then. We both want to hear him speak today if we can. What street did you say to take? Which way?" "Keep going down here towards the waterside, but fork left when this road reaches a small square. You will soon then come to Lakeside Way, and you won't miss it. It has trees down one side, and that is where Yeshua's house is. Set back a little from the road. I've been there," she added quietly then, as if a little shy. We thanked her again, and carried on in the direction she had pointed. Would we really be getting there soon? The sun was getting low in the sky behind us, and we sensed we must hurry. Once we passed the square, Aberneth was sent to sort out some rooms that we could stay in for a few days. Rachel had used them before, and they had places for the horse and mule as well. We walked the last part to Marimian, crossing other streets and catching glimpses of the Galilean Sea. The sun was only just above the hills that we had travelled through, and the sky was streaked in pink traces. The woman we had talked to was right about the trees, and it was easy to pick out Yeshua's house, as there were many people crowding around in front of several open windows, trying to listen to the words being spoken in the front room. We joined the back of the throng outside the house. We couldn't quite see the speaker because we had the least favourable spot, but we could hear the words that he was saying. And the kingdom of heaven is no place on this earth. It is the kingdom of the soul. It is within you. To go there, you must have the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and the heart to thirst, to feel, to know. There is an eye to see the inner truth, an inner ear to understand the welcome within. And yet we need not feet to walk the path where life is breathed anew with every breath. For to open wide the doors to love, it is our hearts that must gratefully accept the gifts that flow from God's own store. The Master comes to clear the way, to help remove the obstacles we have become entangled with, the snares that have been set to catch unwary souls. These traps have done their work. We see it all around, and for our part, we must learn to avoid them before they can take their hold. Not all are obvious as the cruel ailments that affect so many in this time. Most are subtle traps and flaws that claw at the fabric of our minds and souls, to drag us down some darker road than we were meant to go. These shadows must be swept away if we are to make the doorway clear, to bring the kingdom near. And the Master comes to help you, so the King can reach out from within to guide you through. Peace and joy are yours in great abundance, waiting for you to claim as your own inheritance. Stand up, arise, shake off these crumbling chains of sin, and come to know your home within. Not within these houses of stone and wood, but rather prepare to go within that human house that God has made for each of you with loving care. Be ready, for your day has arrived. Your time has come. Blessings to you all. Yeshua must have finished with this blessing of the crowd. Shouts of joy and cries for him to stay and speak some more mingled from the front room. I was home. I didn't want to go anywhere else, just stay and soak in the feeling of the approaching evening and its blend of warmth and cooling balm. We had only just arrived, but now many people were leaving. Yeshua had apparently gone from the front room, but there was still an atmosphere of rich calmness remaining. Everything felt just right in those minutes as we leaned against the wall beside the entrance gate. We said nothing and didn't need to. Both Rachel and I felt the same. A woman came up to us and started talking to Rachel. I didn't listen to what they were saying, but then an older man was there and talking to me as well. He must have noticed we were late arrivals, for he was telling me about what had been happening earlier in the day, how miraculously people had been healed of many things. I couldn't concentrate on what he was saying, for the all too familiar buzzing was starting in my head again. Only then did I realize that the spirits had been driven away, and now were clawing back into me again. Things had just seemed so right that I hadn't even noticed. Now that they were there again, pervading my spaces, I had to turn away from the man. It must have seemed very rude of me, but luckily Rachel noticed something was happening and broke away from her conversation to help me. She raised a firm hand and consoling glance in the direction of the man, coming to my side to guide me from the very place that we had journeyed so long to reach. There was nothing more we could do that night, and we made our way across half the town to where Aberneth had secured our stay. The angry buzzing of my attendant spirits was lessened enough for me to continue almost normally, but the joy I was starting to feel at Yeshua's house was now replaced again by the sadness of my appointed lot. Not wholly so, for the hope that had flowered in that joy within me had left its indelible impression.